David Lick. I'm a local practicing attorney. I've been doing it for decades. And about, 4 or 5 years ago, Anne Marie attended the first ever public-private partnership conference we had at the Henry Center. And she said, you know what? Why don't you give that presentation in Halifax, Nova Scotia? And my first question was, what time of the year? And since it was in June, I said yes. And I met Dan Lynch, who has a unique position in being able to be a professor at Dalhousie University, and also he teaches here at MSU. And so Dan Lynch is truly international. He travels back and forth between Dalhousie and here more times a year than most of us go to Detroit. And so the topics today about cross-border issues are very apropos. And Anne Marie, who has just come in, likewise is, for my part, I know her best as the real head of the Great Lakes International Trade and Transport Hub, which started from scratch about 3 or 4 years ago. And we service some of the same issues, and we generally write white papers, which the state of Michigan has utilized in some of their programs. And so between the two of them, you will be well served with information, thought-provoking ideas, avant-garde policies and procedures that are going on. And hopefully along the way you will develop some questions for them to answer that perhaps are more definitive or directed to what you are interested in. So, who goes first? Dan Lynch, you're up.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Dan.
So we're going to give a presentation first about logistics and transportation and cross-border trade issues, and then Anne Marie's going to talk to you about sort of the policy implications. And this presentation, part of it, we did with Chris at Eastern Border Transportation Coalition, right? Yep. So, anyway, I'm at Dalhousie University most of the time. Last year I had the pleasure to teach here in the fall, and then in the spring, back in Dalhousie, which is, they call that winter term, and that's truth in advertising, okay? So first, kind of move on since we're running behind, talk to you a little bit about logistics and supply chain trends and what's happening. So if you think about trade, and I'll talk about the numbers in terms of trade, but I want to give you a little background. I teach logistics and supply chain management. So if you think about how does freight move, I know you see the railroad advertising quite a bit now, but in the US, it's basically 70% of everything moves by truck, and in Canada, it's 90%. So even if it moves by air, or if it moves by boat, or if it moves by train, it's going to end up in a truck at some point in time. So you think about the bridge that everybody's been working towards, critical infrastructure, okay? Motor carrier rail prices, air, all those prices are basically up. We'll talk about gas prices in just a minute, different trends, okay? Inventory carrying costs are up, so it's very important where you source your product from, where you get it from. Driver shortages, biggest problem in trucking is that the average driver is like 58 years old, wants to retire, and doesn't want to drive anymore. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of drivers that are going to be needed in the future. So when you get your college degree, no, just kidding, okay? Most students don't want to do it. Sustainability, risk mitigation, all those sort of things have changed how we manage our supply chains. It used to be, let's try to just move to Asia and get the lowest price. Well, if we have a slowdown in the ports, which we do now on the West Coast, you're not going to be able to get the Christmas presents you were hoping to get. So all these trends help to set where we source from. And one of the things that's really important is to think about North America in terms of being competitive, okay? So, if we look at truck tonnage, it's going up quite a bit, even though their pricing is only up 1.9%. If we look at, this is called truckload, these are the long haul trucks that you, when you're driving down the highway, you see. You can see that prices are up about 4.9. Truckload, which is the delivery system that comes to your local store and delivers to multiple locations. Pricing is going up a little bit, not great, but it's going up. Even though that's happening, what's happening in trends. Most of these drivers are making less money than they used to, which is exacerbating the problem of, I don't want to do that, okay? I want to be home. I don't want to be away from home 1 or 2 weeks a year. So, bear with me here, guys. So we talked about trucking prices, rail, okay, up 9.2%. Costs are rising there. Water transport rose 4.5%. Ocean is kind of slowly improving. Air freight is pretty flat. So all these modes that carry everything, and the one thing that drives most of pricing is gas. And if you think about gas prices, how are they now, guys? Say that again?
Lower.
Lower, right? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Good,
Who said good? Why?
because it makes it easier for people to be mobile and get around and access things that otherwise would be more limiting, and especially for working class people, because they can afford it.
Absolutely, and it makes it easier. We just talked 70% and 90% of goods moved by truck, which is usually by gas, except in some respects it's bad. Okay, well, environment maybe, but what am I holding here?
Currency.
Yeah, okay, which is worth more? Now, yeah, the US is worth, okay, this thing over here, unfortunately, I got a 15% pay cut this year, okay, because this dropped to 85 cents, right? And barrel of oil is down to like $75, down from 90 something. Good or bad? You got to think about this from a global perspective. It's great for us. It's great if you're a truck driver. If you're out in the oil sands, Alberta, North Dakota, is that good or bad? The price of oil's down. It's not good. Okay, so there's the economy overall and how it affects us personally, and how does it affect the supply chain. So very interesting implications. The price of gas has dropped 25% since July of this year. That's astounding, but more about that later. So we have all these things that we're trying to deal with, and do you run away? I say, sure, that sounds like a really good idea. Okay, but maybe we could just work on cooperation and working together, because I think it's about North America, Canada, US, and Mexico working together to be competitive in a global environment, because we're making things more difficult than it used to be, okay? So if we think about US Canadian exports and imports, okay? So US exports to Canada, 19% of all exports, or $1 out of every 5. US exports to Canada are up 77% since 2003, 319% since 1993. That's astounding. When I ask most people in Canada, who's our largest trading partner, what do they say? No. China. Same thing when I ask my students in the US, who's our largest trading partner? They go, China, it's gotta be. Okay, last year when I was teaching here, I had a class that was probably half Asian, and they were like, your numbers are wrong. That's impossible. You must be lying or something, you know? So let's look at the trade, okay? 632 billion, okay? $1.7 billion a day, and 300,000 people cross the border. I was telling these guys, I was looking at my passport when I was stuck at Newark the other day, and I was wrong. It's a relatively new passport. I had 49 stamps on it from from traveling. I counted again this morning just to make sure it was actually 56. So when the border guards say, hi, how are you doing today? You know you're probably traveling too much. How is Canada and the US tied? Now, I've seen different numbers, but look at the amount of states that Canada is the #1 trading partner. I've seen 34, I've seen 35, I've seen 37. I don't know what the exact number is, but it's amazing. I was doing a presentation in West Virginia, and they said China, and I showed them that Canada is their largest trading partner, and they basically said, you're crazy. I don't know where you got those numbers, but it was true, okay? Bureau of Statistics. So what's moving across the border? If you look at the top 2 or even 4 commodities, mineral, fuels, oils, and water, right? Vehicles, computer-related machinery and parts and electrical machinery and parts. Huge amounts of products that move across the border every single day, okay? How do they move? Okay, here's some numbers in terms of surface modes, truck, rail, pipeline. Again, you can see the importance of truck, okay? So you don't really think about that much, but everything we buy and everything we sell has to get here somehow, as well as the people and the services to support that.